Hey everyone! Before we dive in, we want to give a big shout out to TACA, the Arts Community Alliance, and Moody Fund for the Arts. This season of Dance Behind the Screen podcast is powered in part by their support. Because of them, you're getting free episodes wherever you listen, full video interviews on YouTube, and our amazing guests receive an artist stipend. If you love what we do and want to support the work, head over to knowvoxdance.com. All right, let's get into it.
No Box Dance presents Dance Behind the Screen, process production, and social media. Don't forget, say no to the box. Dile no a la caja. 고정관념 이란 상자에서 벗어나세요.
Welcome to Dance Behind the Screen podcast, where dance, technology, and creativity converge. I'm your host, Martheya, and today's episode is titled Beyond the Stage, How Bombshell Dance Project Reinvents Audience Connection. We're diving in to how dance theater is evolving to create immersive, emotionally resonant experiences that break down traditional boundaries between performers and audiences. Joining us are the visionary co-artistic directors of Bombshell Dance Project, Emily Bernet and Taylor Rodman. Together, they blend dance and theater to bring stories to life in unexpected spaces. Welcome to our show.
Yay, we're so excited to be here.
I'm really grateful to have y'all both on today. So let's explore how Bombshell Dance Project reshapes audience connection, like I talked about in the intro. You're really known for blending different formats with familiar stories to really bring audiences closer to dance. So I'm wondering, how do your unique backgrounds really support this mission?
Yeah, this is Taylor, by the way. Hi. Something Emily and I joke about all the time is making work that our dads will stay awake in.
Love that.
Our parents and our families have been watching us dance since we were 3 years old. And we've kind of spanned a whole different spectrum of dance styles. And creating Bombshell, our idea of creating kind of immersive, audience-engaging works so that people who maybe aren't as comfortable going to a dance show can relate to it and enjoy it and not leave asking, what did that mean?
Yeah, Taylor and I have been creating work together since high school. I mean, we met at Booker T. Washington, started making work together then. And I think like that creative collaboration over the years has really pushed us to always try something new. You know, at some point we got bored of making dances just for the stage and we're like, what would it be like if we took this off the stage and tried something different? So I think like that collaboration that is so interwoven to just like what we've always enjoyed doing and has become an important part of Bombshell has always kind of pushed us to just try something new, try something different, innovate.
Yeah, I know we have a lot of conversations that feel sometimes like dance is just kind of like this elitist experience where like, if you're not a dancer, then you don't understand what you're watching. Like you have no idea what's going on. And I think that can be, you know, so isolating, especially now in the times of like Netflix, TikTok, all these things. People are experiencing dance like all the time, right? Like it's no longer, if you have money to go to the theater, you're going to experience dance. So people like are interested in the body and movement. And so I'm curious, like, how do y'all approach creating these like accessible experiences for audiences? Maybe we could talk about things that like you don't like about more traditional like concert dance experiences. Like what are things you're like, we're not doing this, we're not doing this. And then what are your conversations around how to facilitate those really engaging experiences for the dads, the friends, the parents, the husbands, you know, like all these people who aren't trained dancers?
I think we noticed that there is an ability to, like when you're sitting in a proscenium theater watching a traditional show, you can just walk in and not fully be there. Like it's so easy to kind of watch what's happening and not quite ever dive in when you have that separation. And our attention spans are, you know, everybody's talking about it, right? Our attention spans are so short now. So I think we got really interested in how can we, both when we're using a proscenium stage and when we're doing something more immersive, force people to wake up to the experience that they're having, leave their phone the rest of their day behind and throw them into the experience right from the very beginning.
What are those tools and strategies?
This is Dance Behind the Screen, where technology, strategy, and creativity collide.
Yes, and in one of our last shows, from the minute you walk in, we're trying to create an experience. Characters welcoming you through the door and you're entering this different world. Even with our last show, Flock, that we worked with Pegasus Contemporary Ballet on, it was on a proscenium stage at the Kalita Humphreys Theater, but we decided to have an immersive element where the show started in the lobby so that the dancers kind of like surprise you almost while you're, mingling in the audience. Like the show kind of comes to you and like sucks you in. So even though we did use that traditional format of like being in the audience with the dancers on stage, like trying to find a way to kind of like break the barrier right from the beginning.
Yeah, another thing that comes to mind is we like to start with familiar stories because dance can be so like ethereal and sometimes standoffish. I think by giving an audience a storyline that they are already familiar with, that they can grasp onto, already makes their buy-in from this first step they make in the theater, or even just purchasing the ticket, like already a little bit more accessible and less scary. Yeah. And that helps them follow a story. And then our job as choreographers, we like to take the story and then turn it upside down in some element to keep it fresh, not only for the audience, but also for us too.
Yeah, and I feel like we should definitely talk about your work. One of my favorite works you've done is in the conservatory with a knife, which was maybe you can explain it obviously better than I can, but it was a really cool experience as an audience member. You're basically like transported inside the board game Clue.
Yeah, you nailed the description. We call it a life-size version of the board game Clue. We were in 3 different levels of the Wiley Theater spanning over, gosh, Emily, was it 10 rooms?
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy. Whose idea was this? You're exactly correct. We kind of gathered the audience together in the main ballroom, which was the literal stage, and then had everyone running all over the Wiley Theater from dressing rooms under the stage up to the balcony at the top floor. There was this crazy element of chance with that and with kind of all immersive work, because there's this element where you don't know how the audience is going to respond, even if you literally say them, follow me. Like sometimes they don't. So it's your job as a performer to figure it out and how to keep the storyline fresh and moving. And then there's all these different choreographic hurdles that we have to kind of play with in order to hold space and hurry up to catch the next scene, if that makes sense. But on the inside, performing immersive work, it forces you to turn your lights on as much as I think we hope it does for the audience members as well. So there's a really charged exchange of energy. Makes me never want to dance on a stage ever again. There's no going back.
Yeah.
Well, it's so exciting. And I think one of the things that is truly challenging is, when you're doing something a little bit different, how do you clearly communicate that to your audiences and your community? So like a challenge we're facing is we've kind of rebranded ourselves. We're this dance think tank. So we're really bringing people together to talk about dance, to be about dance in many different forms. And a challenge that we've had and we continue to struggle with is to find the right language and ways to communicate to our audiences what we're doing and what you can expect. So I'd love to have a little bit of a conversation around how do you conceptualize this project on your website or through your social channels to really communicate the idea so the audiences are feeling included from the beginning. So it's like, how are you answering your mission like your work does, but when you're marketing it?
Yeah, that's a great question and a really interesting challenge. Almost not giving them everything right up front, but then it's really important to us when people come to our shows that we are keeping them super safe, like really telling them what to expect. I think we don't want to pull our audiences into an experience, especially in an immersive format where they feel like they don't know what's coming. So especially like the second they walk into the theater and when we send like an email, once you get your tickets, like we want them to know, like wear comfortable shoes and all of those aspects of like, here's what this is going to look like, how you're going to experience it so that people can really get fully immersed in it and not be like on that edge of nervous for what's going to happen. We do try to like give them every single detail. But then I think on the front end, when it comes to the marketing, we've really leaned into like leaving a little bit of mystery of like, what are you coming to see? I think within the conservatory, we used a lot of like step into the mystery language. Like you're going to be a part of this, you're going to be immersed in this, but not quite tell them everything until they've really like come to join the experience.
Yeah, piggybacking off of that, we talk about this all the time, like the responsibility of being creators of immersive work. We would never want an audience member to be like watching a show and being like, oh God, am I about to be a performer?
Don't pick me.
And it's such a fine line and hard because we are asking something of the audience, like whether that's standing. And one of our first immersive shows, we literally asked the audience to dance with us. Super fun. But yeah, there is something there, being really thoughtful as creators on how much can we push that boundary of asking of the audience without making them uncomfortable.
Do you have advice or like strategies that you grapple with like, what is that boundary and how do you create these safe spaces for exploration while also kind of challenging the audience experience?
Yeah, I think one of the things we think about a lot is just trying to be really clear about the expectations. Well, it depends on the format, but I would say like with the Great 30, where we were asking the audience to dance with us, one of the things we really worked on in the creation of the show, we had an MC character in the show who was like guiding the audience. It was like kind of like their pathway into the show. We really worked on like what's the right language to tell them exactly what we hope that they will do, and then leave enough space that they can like dance in any way they want, but that there's not so open-ended to like what are the millions of options of movement I can do right now. It's like, we want you to take your arm up and swing it down. So try to get it as simple as possible so that it's easy to participate, but then that there's like jumping off room for people to kind of do what they want. And then I think in a show like in the conservatory with the knife, where you can follow the characters through the show, being as clear as we can about the boundaries of the rooms, like what the pathway through the show can be, because we do want you to feel like you can take any path you want. But we also want to make sure that if you're looking for where to go or who to follow, that feels really clear. That like there's a dancer you can follow through the entire show, that they're giving you commands like, follow me or you shouldn't be here. You know, thinking through those ways of explaining where people should go so that they feel like they're like cared for on the journey, but have the freedom to make a choice if they want to leave the room and go try something different.
Yeah, and I feel like you both do such a great job of crafting those experiences where it's really clear. Like they're never, I've been to several of your shows and there was never a moment where I was like, what am I supposed to do? It was always so clear, like, oh, okay, now I do this, now I do that. But I still felt like I got to choose my own experience, choose my own adventure, which was really exciting.
Oh, cool.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about technology because I feel like there's so many of these immersive experiences, like Meow, for instance, that are popping up that are really using technology and movement to create truly immersive experiences for audience members. Thoughts on technology? Do you want to incorporate it? Do you not want to incorporate it? Do you think it's relevant to creating these immersive dance experiences, or is it something that you think takes you out of the embodied experience? And I ask this because at NoBugs, we're really interested in technology as a tool to really enhance the embodied experience of dance, not to replace it, but really truly enhance it, which is why we have a film festival, because that's one clear example of using cinematography, for instance, as this tool to kind of come into this embodied experience. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. And behind the screen, what are y'all talking about? How do you know what to bring into your next project?
Yeah, it's not a path gone down very deep yet, mostly because first medium is movement. And where the two of us start our creative process is movement. This question of how can we build the right environment and the right storyline to get people to look at movement more closely. A lot of our projects have focused on that so far. But when it comes to immersive work, building the environment is such an exciting challenge and where we look for collaborators. And so I think all of the technology and the potential for advancement there is huge. I mean, thinking about the people we've brought into our projects to create the right lighting environment, to tell the story through shifts in lighting, to tell the story through the set pieces that are in the room. So yeah, I would say it's not something that we've gone super deep into in our projects yet, but it feels like the possibilities are kind of endless when it comes to collaborating to build that environment.
Yeah, I think Emily and I have talked a lot about like what would it look like to have a long-standing immersive residency, like could be a show that could stand up for like a month somewhere. We don't have the answers of what that could look like yet, but we envision technology would play a huge role in that. in terms of setting the stage and telling the story of what we're hoping to share. So far, we've been pretty analog with our creations. There's almost an element of not knowing all of our options too.
Yeah.
I think most of the blend of dance and technology and just live theater in general that I've experienced has been more on the consumer side rather than as a creator. And I'm interested in it, but haven't bridged that gap yet. But I'm curious. It feels like that's what people are into these days.
Well, it's certainly becoming more accessible in the sense of just affordability, right? They used to be so expensive, and now like rentals for projectors are a lot more feasible on a
Right.
smaller scale budget than even just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Exciting possibilities for your future. I want to take it a few steps back. Before the call, we talked about No Box Dance just completed the Taka Arts Accelerator. In our first episode of this season, we talk about our strategic plan and what it's like to reimagine our mission, our vision, our values, and basically how are we going to accomplish this vision that we have as an organization. And a lot of what we've learned has been extremely useful. And that's why this season we're really focusing on strategic planning and technological innovation. I'd love to talk to you all about strategic planning, whether it be behind the scenes of your organization or maybe just a project as an example. But when you have an idea for something, like where does it start? Especially, I know there's a lot of challenges when working as co-creators. And that's like a challenge that we face a lot at Novox too, is, we have this team of 5 people who are in different parts of the world. And how do we kind of come together to bring one idea to life? So I'd love to kind of go on that journey with you all and hear, where do you start? And then we can go from there.
Yeah. So often our work starts from a feeling or, something that we've been sitting on that we've been thinking about recently. I think along with that, like kind of starting with a feeling, we've been also pulling from familiar stories or stories that have been sticking with us that we think people will love, that we think people will connect to. So that's often kind of where we start. One of the things that we learned from reimagining our strategic plan, we really refocused the vision of the company on immersive work and being an incubator for dance makers, like putting together all the collaborative aspects that have always been a part of the company and thinking about how that informs our immersive work and these like fresh formats that we're working with. I think in terms of like planning process, what we've learned is that like an immersive show just takes like an insane amount of planning, like really a different process than I think some of our early pieces where we would start with a feeling, get in the studio, make some phrase work, and then like the show comes from there and like the ideas would come from there, maybe not even having a full vision at the beginning of the process of like what the piece means or what it means to us. But looking at some of the projects that we have in mind going forward, like the strategic piece of it is so much bigger, like building out even to the point of like really writing the shows and building out like a format for how we're going to create each section and how someone would experience the show. All of that is a whole new kind of process for us. So we've leaned a lot more into that strategic piece before we even get in the studio, what that looks like.
And is it you two who come together, or do you bring on collaborators like from the initial idea to kind of help with that?
Yeah, both of those things. Most of the ideas start with Emily and I saying, what if, fill in the blank, and then we look at each other and laugh because it sounds scary. Most of our ideas, we don't really say yes to them unless it freaks us out a little bit. But once we have a kind of decent grasp on the concept, then we'll reach out to. We've had the privilege of working with great writers who've helped like write literal our characters and dialogue and the scenes. We have a crazy spreadsheet these days for our shows where we'll kind of put scene by scene who's in it, what's happening, like what's the motivation behind each one of the characters. And then Emily and I will choreograph based on that scene and then thread the whole thing together. And then, of course, beyond that, have an amazing lighting designer, Aaron Johansson, and Jeff, our musical engineer, who helps fill in those really, really big gaps to make the show happen. Yeah, so larger team for sure. And then, of course, our dancers. We work not only collaboratively, Emily and I together, but our dancers are a huge part of every piece that we make. And they're really vocal, which is so nice and fun to create with them. If we say like, I wonder if you tried it like this, and they'll say, I liked it better the other way, which makes it feel like it's all hands on deck for sure.
I love that. And I think
Really?
that's really unique and special. And what I'm curious about is for those who might be interested in creating immersive works themselves, maybe they identify more as an independent artist and don't have like this established company yet. So after you have the idea, when do you start thinking about funding? And I ask that because from my own experience, sometimes funding can really set the limits or make the box, the frameworks for like what's actually possible and who you can actually bring inside of the project with you. So I'd love to kind of hear how you all tackle that.
Yeah,
Totally
I think
fair.
we've done it's a great question again.
Yeah.
We've done a mix of both, of looking at we have this much budget, and so what can we build within this budget? I think we make our best work when we say we're just going to make the idea, we're going to plan like the craziest thing that we want to do, and then find a way to get the funding. I think like trying to take that barrier off of it at the beginning of the process helps us make the most exciting product. But then also, we have gotten so creative so many times as you get to the end of the project to say like, okay, we started with the craziest, biggest idea we could think of. We're going to find a way to write the grants, contact the right people, get the donors involved to make this happen. And then how can we get creative on the back end when we know what budget we have to work with to say like, okay, we don't have enough to build an entire dining room. How can we make a vibe out of a table and a couple of lights that really feels immersive and feels right for the show? Kind of a mix of all of it, I think. But yeah, I would say start with the biggest idea that you have and then see how you can make a version of that.
I think that's great insight because I know for myself, like a challenge I faced is I feel like earlier on, like writing grants for projects, I almost felt like the grant limited my creativity and the possibilities, especially being the one writing the grant. And so then I felt like everyone else in my collaborative team, I'm like, wow, you're more creative than I am. I'm like so tied to these ideas because I spent all this time writing about it. And I feel like now, like the more time I spend in that practice, the less attached I am to the grant writing idea and the more open I am to think outside of the box in that capacity. But it also feels like you talked about responsibility in terms of the audience, but I'm sure you also feel the responsibility to your collaborators to make sure that everyone's being paid fairly for their contributions and their work outside of grant writing, which is a very common pathway for funding, especially for nonprofits. What other ways do you think about getting money to support your team?
One of our big goals is making shows that people want to come see and making ticket revenue an important part of our budget and building a community around the shows that we're making, whether that's fundraising or just people coming to see the shows, like really building that community to supplement the grant writing process.
And have you found like great success in that? I feel like it's also, so much unknown, just like with the grant writing, like you don't know if you're going to get the grant every year. How are you going to know you're going to, sell this many tickets? What are your thoughts, I guess, around sustainability in that practice?
Oh, that's a good question. I think paying our artists fairly is a non-negotiable like step one for us always, which is like one of the main pillars of honestly why we founded Bombshell as well, having been on the other side of that.
Yeah, and we definitely relate to you all in that sense. And I think that's why we've been so supportive and attracted to y'all's work too. There's so many artists out there who are told, oh, you're just doing this for exposure. And we're like, how is that good for the dance ecosystem or even just the world at large
to be a part of these projects? Like we have to make that line in the sand of everyone should be paid fairly for the work that they're doing. So we always put that as a top priority in any of our budgets.
I love that.
I will say, having been a company since 2016, like we have a literal rejections folder in our inbox. Like we've applied for so many things and we don't get everything that we apply for. In grants too, there's like a whole other side of storytelling required that's similar in some ways, but different in a lot of ways than the storytelling that we're hoping to achieve with our audiences, if that makes sense. Like sharing why this work matters today in the city of Dallas. It's something that we've kind of started to think harder about when we're grant writing. And then what's fun with our immersive work is that you're literally in arm's distance away from audience members. You get to see their faces, you get to look into their eyes, which since we've started doing immersive work has helped build our relationship with our audience members so that when we do need their support, they get the vision, they get the vibe, and they know us both as creators and the dancers as well, which has helped with some of our funding over the years as well.
I think that's
We
really
also
good.
we do a lot of reverse Q&As at the end of our shows where we'll talk, but we also ask the audience a lot of questions and want to know what they think. And that has helped guide us as we're talking about how to build this community and audience around the work and try to make ticket sales a part of our budget. Yeah, asking them questions about what they're enjoying, what they want to see more of. I think that has really helped guide us, like being open to that kind of pathway of like, what do people want to see? And trying to marry like what we're interested in with what our audience might be interested in has helped us kind of get on that path of, I mean, we hope people keep coming to the shows, but that's the goal. But yeah, trying to like embrace the fun, honestly, of like, we talked about in the conservatory with the knife, like coming into a life-size Clue game, like part of the idea behind that is how can we get people excited about coming to a dance show, even if they maybe or don't usually see dance, they're not usually a dance patron, like they're not as comfortable in a dance space, like what can we possibly do to tell them like this is a space for you, and then get them to come and actually see something that they might like that they wouldn't have known that they would like. So always trying to listen and see what people might want to see more of.
You're listening to Dance Behind the Screen podcast. Let's explore the future of dance together.
And I want to talk more about who your audience is, I guess, and your messaging to your audience. It sounds like how you're defining your audience is for those that may not be a dancer, but I'd love to kind of hear it from you. Like, how do you identify your audience? And then how are you being really clear with your messaging, whether it's like before the event or after the show, to kind of stay connected with them? I'd love to know like tangible, like touch points maybe that you have with them that could be useful for our listeners to kind of try out in their own experiences.
Well, that's tough. It expands the spectrum, like Emily was saying.
Yeah.
More recently, it's been exciting getting more theater patrons, kind of tricking them into watching dance. Surprise, you're at a dance show. That's been interesting.
No, I mean, exactly. I think exactly what you're saying. Like, we want our shows to be for everyone. And we do want, I think we kind of market to and attract not only dance patrons, because like our hope is that we are connected with the dance community and like bringing those people to our shows to see dance, but that we can also market to people who are interested in a new experience, you know, people who maybe like any form of art, like have some in. But yeah, trying to connect to people who just want to do something fun on a Friday night and then show them that that fun thing can be dance, I think is something that we've thought about.
And what are the ways that you feel like you found success in doing that? I mean, because I would, from my perspective, you've totally found success, like in having so many amazing sold out shows and things like that. So where are the places that you're going to connect to those people, and what kind of content are you creating that makes them feel welcome to come?
Yeah. So we're using a lot of traditional channels, but talking to people through Instagram, we think a lot about our brand and our social presence and the way that we market our shows online, trying to make really dynamic, creative that we can put out on Instagram to show people that they're coming to something exciting and that it's going to be an exciting show. We talked a little bit about how we talk about the shows and trying to form language around them that is really welcoming and not too specific to dance, not too much insider knowledge in the initial communications about the show. And yeah, we do a lot of email marketing to people who have had any touch point with us. We've started a few new programs over the last couple of years. We do these creation labs that bring different artists together to do just a 1-week process where, you know, we make something throughout the week. It's a devising process that brings different artists together. And then we host that in a different location each time. We've done one at the Dallas Contemporary, one at the Oak Cliff Assembly. And we found those as interesting ways to meet people who are interested in different art forms. A lot of times the creation labs will incorporate people from different mediums. Like, you know, we've had writers, we've had visual artists, we've had theater makers, people from other realms that maybe haven't touched a Bombshell work before. And we've found that has brought people to come see the work for the first time, maybe experience Bombshell for the first time, And then from there, dive in with our marketing to say, hey, keep coming to Bombshell things. You're going to like our next show too. Any way that we can physically meet people in person, I think is always my top priority. Places where we can get them to see the work and experience what we have to offer. But trying to also recreate that through Instagram and those digital channels in order to just introduce people to what we're doing and convince them to come see more.
It's really exciting. And I think it's refreshing, especially in this digital age where it seems like everything is extremely digital. And so to have those in-person experiences through your programming to then slowly bring people in to understand the work that you're all doing, I think is just totally genius. So congrats on that.
Thank you. It's been fun. Yeah. We love meeting new people and people who are interested in different art forms. We've learned so much from those conversations that are started around having somebody who maybe heard about the event from a photographer because they're a photographer, and then getting their perspective on the work just sends us in a whole new direction. Fun.
It's really special. Well, we're getting close to time. So before we get into our final segments, is there anything that you want to share with our listeners?
Emily, should we try the tag team talk about, this kind of started doing the Arts Accelerator, but being a female identifying company?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is something that kind of evolved over the years, but we started Bombshell because we wanted to make really daring roles for female identifying artists. And over the years have kind of grappled with what that means and how that can stay fresh and relevant and not isolate our audiences, thinking, oh, there's our female artist. It must be a show about being a girl. Right. So during the Arts Accelerator, when we were forced to kind of dive into what our mission, our vision, our values is for the organization, we kind of buttoned up against that on like, what actually does this mean for us today? And leadership was a word that came to mind for us, not only just with creating roles for these female identifying artists, but also like what that means as an organization by hiring these people, giving our artists more responsibility and more of a buy-in to the organization as a whole beyond just being asked to be a dancer, to empower artists beyond dancing, helping with that larger sustainability piece that we were talking with earlier.
I'd love to hear more about the ways that you bring that into practice. And I ask that because at No Bugs, we're really trying to facilitate a culture of creating resources for the entrepreneur. Because at this point in time, really all artists, whether we like it or not, kind of have to wear that entrepreneur hat to share our ideas with the world and connect and network with people in different places and spaces. So I'd love to hear like how you actually do that.
We always say everything is open for discussion in our rehearsal process and in the rooms that we build. And I think something that we learned over the years is that because we started the company together, and the way that we create, even in rehearsal, is one move at a time between the two of us. So we're naturally collaborating at all times, which I think opened a really easy way to make the room collaborative and to allow people to watch our process and then our dancers to kind of get in on our process. Like at this point in our company's life, they're even inputting at all times into like literally from like what the choreography is all the way to then I think that makes a natural bridge to like leaving that like open space for discussion on kind of anything that's going on at the company, the way that we're building the show, their thoughts on the show. And then we just try to be a very like open door policy when it comes to like any of the entrepreneurial aspects as well, and take their opinions into account. Like we're always here to help and support that. So yeah, we're trying to just remove any of those barriers of like, here's what's behind the curtain and here's what you get to see, but just keeping everything really open as a company as we're creating things, I think felt so natural to us because of the way that we collaborate. But over time, we found that we also have to make that a really intentional part of our process because it's something we love so much about the way that Bombshell runs. We also have to think about how can we build that into our administrative processes, into our rehearsal processes? How can we open up roles over time for the dancers who are a part of the organization as dancers? How can they become rehearsal directors and choreographers and anything that they're interested in the creative process? And we have dancers who are photographers who take photos during the process and they know the piece so well, so they're able to take beautiful pictures of it. How can we incorporate them in just any way that they are interested and kind of like feed those interests as well?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we've also found too that the more transparent that we've been with our dancers, the more excited they are to participate. I think our openness with them has made them want to be there, which then makes the work richer by collaborating with them because they're invested in it and feel part of themselves in the work, which is meaningful
Honestly,
to us as well.
The way that we make work at this point, it wouldn't be possible without their creative thoughts and opinions, pieces that we build, or like moments in the choreographic process that it just requires every single one of them to make choices. And I think that's so special that they're willing to offer that.
I think it's so beautiful and meaningful to create that kind of a culture as we're all kind of creating our own spaces, whether it be in the rehearsal studio or sharing on your Instagram or TikTok channel. I think just being so intentional about what kind of spaces are you wanting to create and share, and how can you be extremely intentional about making those a reality?
Yeah. And
Well,
hope that we're best friends also. Like Emily and I are best friends. I get to work with my best buds since high school, so that kind of rocks.
It does. And I mean, we certainly relate here at No Box too. You know, we all met in grad school and now we're all best friends and like having kids together. It's so crazy. At the same time, I think in one of my earlier interviews today, I was talking about, you know, art is really just kind of a reflection of ourselves, right? And the experiences that we're going through and how we're engaging with the world. And I think what better way to create art than with your best friends, because that's your reality. It's really special.
Yeah, totally.
Our tagline here at No Box Dance is say no to the box and yes to the future of dance. I'd love to hear how you both say yes to the future of dance.
We just keep saying yes to our crazy ideas. I think every time we do a project, we have something else and we learn something. When we did in the conservatory, we learned that people wanted to hear dialogue. And so our next show was all dialogue. We always say yes to whatever the next thing is and figure out how we can go make that happen.
I think you nailed it.
Ditto to that. Love it.
What she said.
Flash 4.
Well, finally, we have our Flash 4 round. This is where we ask all our guests to answer 4 questions in a flash, so as fast as possible. Maybe we can have Taylor go first and then Emily for each one to keep it quick.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. If you had to recommend a resource to our audience, what would it be?
Ooh.
Okay, mine is the dance edit. It's like a weekly email from Dance Media. It's awesome.
Dance edit. Emily Bernet. That's what I would recommend.
Give me something else.
Tomorrow is a book. Read that book.
Great. What was the first dance you saw?
Minus 16. My first real dance that I saw.
Same. We were probably there together.
That's so special. Do you think social media has a positive influence on the dance world? Yes.
Should I say why? Yes, because it makes dance more accessible and more eyes get to see movement.
What is your favorite social media platform?
Instagram.
Thank you both so much for coming on our show and sharing all about Bombshell Dance Project and a look behind the screen of how you created your company and how you create these amazing immersive experiences for audiences.
Thank you. We admire you guys, so thank you for making this space happen.
Well, thank you. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey beyond the stage. How can our listeners stay connected with each of you and Bombshell Dance Project?
Follow us at Bombshell Dance Project on Instagram and check us out on our website, bombshelldanceproject.com. Join our email list and come see a show.
Fantastic. We'll link all of that out in the show notes. And as always, keep dancing behind the screen. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Dance Behind the Screen podcast. Keep dancing, keep innovating. See you next time.
Thanks for taking your time to tune in to Dance Behind the Screen, a bi-monthly interview series where we go behind the screen to question process, product, and social media. Be sure to follow us on social media at KNOW Box Dance. See you next time, and don't forget to say no to the box.